If there's one thing we've learned about business and life, it's that people are the X factor. They constantly surprise us, both in amazing ways and not so much. We're Ben and Syya, and welcome to the Gnaw on This Business Bites podcast. This show is all about real life things we all deal with every day, how they relate to business, and how to make some sense out of our daily chaos. Welcome to the show. And welcome back to another episode of Gnaw on This Business Bites. I'm Ben, and this is Syya. You know what drives me crazy? When people use an insignificantly small data sample to drive their point across. I was reading a survey from one of the HR magazines the other day, and they were saying 78% of people across the United States believe this.
Ugh.
And I sat there and went, okay, that's a bold statement right there. And then I crawled into the data, and the data sample across the United States was based on 1,000 or 1,500 answers. 15, they pulled 1,500 people. And the question is, where did they pull the 1,500 people? Did they pull 1,500 people in New York City, or was it 1,500 people at random across the United States?
Podunk, yeah.
Where did these 1,500 people come from? But in a country of 285 million people or whatever it is, you're sitting there going 1,500 people, and you can say de facto that it's 78% of people believe this, and we're supposed to agree with you. I'm calling, the big BS. Syya, let's gnaw on this.
Okay, I'm just laughing because I was trying to discreetly Google, what's that? Yeah, this is it. There are three kinds of lies: lies, damned lies, and statistics. I think it was
statistics. That's it.
It's okay. So Mark Twain is often attributed to it, but apparently it's someone else.
Right.
But there are three kinds of lies: lies, damned lies, and statistics. So I just love this topic that you brought up because it's so relevant, especially now that we're entering election season.
Yes, it is.
And how we perceive life from our own logins and lenses, right? And it could be myopic, and it could be right. So you're tickling me here because I just want to take this in so many different directions. And I cannot help but wonder, raise your hands, you guys. How many of you are guilty? And let's be real truth bombing ourselves here, people, that we do. What's that thing? It's that self-affirming biases or whatever. You find the stats that back up your thoughts or your perspective. That is where I raise your hand, you guys, if you are guilty of it. I am absolutely 100% guilty of it.
Oh, and for sure. We all sit there and say, okay, I believe this. Now let's go find articles that prove my point.
Yep. Or find people who validate your point, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's where, again, we go into that tribalism, which was an episode prior, 6 months ago, that we probably should refresh, but that whole tribal mentality. And that's how it's easy to slide in, especially in an election year. This is where I love that we're talking about this, because lies, damn lies, and statistics, man alive. Is it because, and I've argued this before too, are we intellectually lazy that when we see 4 out of 5 dentists choose this toothpaste brand and we believe it because we just simply, it feels like it's a correct factoid?
That's right. And 4 out of 5 of those dentists are sponsored by Crest.
Well, I wasn't going to name the brand, young man. They aren't paying us.
I'm just making up a brand. It doesn't matter. It could be Crest, it could be Abe, it could be Colgate. It makes no difference. It could be the fact that those guys are being, they're being queried by their reps. They sit there and say, here's 1,000 free samples. Now, what do you think? I'm going to ask you some questions. What do you think of this?
Well, so here's a 4 out of 5 sounds like neat. Ooh, if you think about it, isn't that just 20%? So 20,
it's 80%.
No,
4 out of 5 is 80%.
Well, 20% do not support this
product.
That's a big fracking percentage if you're thinking about it on a grander scale, right? Wow. Like it's 80%, that's barely B minus, you guys. That's barely like above average. I mean, like if you look at these stats, like I think that's hilarious if you really look at it. And I'm
Or
not a numbers person.
53% of people believe X. That means 47% of people don't
Don't.
believe X.
But that's a majority now.
That's right. The majority of people do. They happen to be, 3% over majority, but it's still the majority believe this.
Oh, golly. Oh, you're just getting me all tickled up right now. You're like,
Well,
I'm like literally like
I got
clapping.
I got a great story for you. In university, I took a stats course because I had to. And I had a professor that believed that stats was God. Stats was
Ooh.
absolute God. If you put statistics in, there's only one way to interpret it. All stats are true, blah, 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 blah. So I sat there and said, okay, here's the set of statistics. And I put them in the middle of the paper. And I used the first half of the paper to argue for the set of statistics. And then I used the back half of the paper to argue against the set of statistics.
Ooh. Let me guess.
I had to have the dean of the department allow me back into the
I
class.
was just gonna say, someone picked a fight. You picked a fight. You picked a
Oh, big
fight.
time. The professor was not happy with me in any way, shape, or form.
This is why I love you, Ben, because you have a little sassafras in you.
I have a lot of sassafras in me, but my attitude is prove it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm willing to have my mind changed. I am more than happy to have my mind changed, but prove it. But prove it in a way that's tangible, that can be backed up, something that makes logical sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I sit there and say there are far too many people using statistics and using numbers for their own best interests. Is 57% of men don't beat their women. That means, okay, does that mean that 43% of them do?
Do?
You
Like,
know,
I don't know.
like, but nobody talks about the other half. It's like, when did you stop beating your wife? It's
Okay, you know what? So let's just pull this back to now on this from a business perspective, right?
sure.
When we're working together, like in a collaborative effort, for example, between two companies, this
Yes.
is where I think a lot of times it's so imperative to understand that whatever key performance indicators, KPIs that you guys put together to achieve a particular goal, it has to be something that is rooted in tangible numbers. So yes, statistics of some sort. However, it's got to be an agreed upon basis of those, how you find those statistics, right?
Yes.
And I
Absolutely.
and I do think sometimes, and this is me tooting my own horn, my own kvetch, a Syya rant, if you will. No, I'm not ranting, I promise, guys, but it is something that does irk me at times. Is I see this far too often, whether it's a Fortune 100 or a solopreneur. You have to give things time
Yes.
to mature. So I can't tell you how many times I've gotten clients who are like, well, we paid you for 90 days of work. And I'm like, and the gestation of a human takes longer than what you're asking for,
Mhm.
right? You're asking me to take you from 0 to 1 million in 90 days. On what universe? If you did the mathematics, you'd have to have X amount of followers, whatever the stats may be, right? So I think that is a reality check for, I think, any business relationship working together. Is your expectations realistic, and what stats are you leveraging to validate and justify your expectations?
And define inputs and outcomes.
Yes.
What do we mean by this input? What do we mean by this outcome? And it has to be mutually agreed upon before you start measuring. Because if you're dealing with with a vendor and a client, you need to sit there and understand. It says, first of all, what are we measuring? Why are we measuring it? How are we measuring it? And what is the defined benefit but from measuring it, and what is a defined outcome?
Right.
And most people don't take the time to do that. Most people don't take the time to create agreed upon accountability and expectations prior to moving forward. But I thought you meant this. Is how many times have you heard, but I thought you meant this? And if we don't define what this is prior to moving forward, you're going to have misinterpretation. You're going to have, disagreements over outcomes. You're going to have disagreements over, what was expected. And all you're going to do is turn a long-term, viable business agreement into a short-term vendor relationship. And we need to sit there as people dealing with clients and push back and say, wait a second here, what do you mean by that? When you say we need to move forward with these KPIs. Okay, how do you define these KPIs?
Time frame for those damn KPIs.
And what's the time frame for the KPIs?
And what measurements are there in place to indicate if you're on par to continue to achieve those KPIs? And if it's extenuating circumstances, internal circumstances, it's something that, like, perfect example was, I was expected to sell like $1 billion, literally between two different technologies getting ratified and then, moving on from another. Yeah, ain't no one buying no one nowhere. Like, yeah, no, not going to happen. So, yeah, no.
And
you're triggering me.
And how are those data points being measured? And how are they being gathered? How are you gathering the data points? Because there's always interpretation. Unless everything is being done by a machine, unless everything is a true data point that is built off a till receipt, you're always dealing with interpretation, and you're always dealing with bias. And how do you sit there and say, wait a second here, what are the biases that we need to overcome when we're creating our measurement?
You have stumped me. You have stumped me, sir.
Well, these are the things that we need to be thinking about, because data is not data. And a lot of companies measure a bunch of data that's superfluous.
Yeah. And
the question is, why are you measuring this? What does it enable us to do? How does it help us reach our goal? Is all it doing is confusing the issue, or is it helping to make relevant decisions?
And dumbing up the gears.
Yeah, I mean, we have the ability with terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of data storage for any one company. And if you're on the cloud, it's unlimited, virtually.
Really.
Well, virtually, for most corporations. You're going to get to a point where it's going to get ridiculous. But for most people, yeah.
Oh my, yeah, no, it's expensive, people.
It does get expensive.
Storage for all that. Anyway, sorry. Okay, I digress.
Anyway, but you sit there and say, there's a whole bunch of data that's being collected with no thought about why it's being collected in the first place.
True that.
And then nobody does anything with it. It just sits there and collects dust and is not being, collaborated. It's not being verified. It's not being interpreted.
Corroborated. That's the
corroborated word is another good word that goes with it. And we need to sit there and say, just because the ones and zeros are ones and zeros doesn't mean anything. It's what do you do with the ones and zeros that matter?
Yeah, right there with you, man. It's all about lies, damn lies, and statistics.
So let's leave it there. I think that lies, damn lies, and statistics is a great place to end this thing. So I'm Ben.
And I'm Syya.
And we'll see you soon.
Hey. Thanks for listening to another episode of Not On This, Business Bites. If you liked what you heard, we most humbly ask that you like, share, and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to communicate more effectively within your organization, contact Ben at yourbrandmarketing.com or me at brilliantbeammedia.com. We can help you build your community, brand awareness, and personality through digital content and podcasting. We cannot wait to hear from you. So see you next week for another episode of Not On This, Business Bites.